Hello, hello. Do you want to just let people know who you are in case people don't know, and maybe a little bit of like an intro just to what sort of films and your sort of interests lie, really?
Yes, I am Retrocora. I am a massive fan of science fiction films, action films, and political films. And any film that mixes any or all of those things together. So happy to talk about literally anything to do with film. Yeah, I write about film from time to time as well, but not very well.
Oh, you just got to do it though, Corey. You just got to keep doing it
You do.
regularly. That's the secret. Yeah, thank you very much, Tommy. Santa was all good. Yes, so I spoke to Retrocora, that's a new name for you, Retrocora, early in the week, and dropped him a few sort of topics that I think we could potentially talk about, and we will probably, go on a tangent from that, and people might have comments, and we might just sort of pick up on those as we go. So the first topic I was going to start with, Retrocora, was the question that I posed to you: is can or is film used as a political statement? And like you just said then, I know you're very much into sort of history and political cinema. So what was your first initial thoughts when I sort of asked you that question?
Um, I always flick back to like science fiction style movies and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
like, film has always been a political thing, if you like. It's always been used to put politics across. But I always feel like it's at its best when it's being done in a science fiction film.
Hmm.
You get like a lot of sci-fi. I think of the right words. You get like a lot of sci-fi films that use like allegory and um, bring politics across in a more subtle way, and I feel like that gets it across to the audience better than if you just kind of sledgehammer them with a Zero Dark 30 or a American Sniper, like these films that are like
Mm.
overtly political.
Yeah.
Like if you sort of say political film, you might think of something like that rather than maybe Starship Troopers, which is just as political in its own weird way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I always kind of have a weird thing where I always kind of come at films from how does this pertain to science fiction,
Hmm.
um, and then kind of work back from there. So that's kind of that's where my first kind of thought was for it.
Yeah, because when I sort of thought the question, I sort of initially thought, well, I thought political cinema isn't necessarily about politics as such. Maybe like you see a lot of American politics, like Lincoln, um, like you said, Zero Dark 30, Argo, all of these sort of films. But then, political matters could be anything really, from sort of, human rights and your sort of views on, how people should live their lives. That could be applied to anything. And I think, like you said, I think sci-fi or fantasy genres can be a good place to sort of set those bigger issues, but they just sort of disguise them in a more sort of appealing way. Um, yeah, so I think genres like that are a good way at sort of looking at sort of very much real issues and making them accessible for people who might not have those interests, day to day in politics, but they can be sort of sprinkled throughout cinema, really. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and I was sort of looking into this a little bit in terms of like the history of it. I'm sure you'll probably sort of correct me if I'm wrong, but I was sort of looking at the sort of political cinema and where it sort of came into sort of Britain, especially, and that obviously that came sort of into war, World War One and World War Two, and you've got the sort of the propaganda films, which obviously are political films in their own right. But when I think of political films, I think of more sort of modern cinema. But obviously you do have that propaganda film, and that's I guess where it all sort of stemmed from. And you even mentioned Starship Troopers, and I know we watched it together in MJ's Discord,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and that sort of sparked conversation. And I don't know if you want to say it again, Rich Crawl, but what you were saying about that sort of opening film and sort of the relevance that had.
Yeah, so there's like a really interesting part in Starship Troopers where the first kind of 10-15 seconds are a shot for shot remake of um, Nazi filmmakers' Nazi propaganda film from the 30s. Her name was Leni Riefenstahl, and she worked for Hitler, and she made a lot of films, but the most famous one's called Triumph for the Will. And it's like this kind of well known. I think it came out in 36ish, maybe 1936. It was kind of basically a Nazi propaganda film made for Germans. And the director of Starship Troopers, Paul Verhoeven, was, I think, born in the Netherlands while it was occupied by Nazi Germany. And these kind of films and stuff like that all stuck with him. So when he got the chance to make Starship Troopers, which was an adaptation of an American book from the 50s, he kind of used it to allegorically kind of send up the Nazis and Nazism and all these things that had been so prevalent in his youth. And like Lenny Riefenstahl's Trying for the Wills in there. Even like the uniforms that the soldiers wear in Starship Troopers are all linked back to Nazism and like SS uniforms and stuff like that. And it's just a really interesting way, I thought. Like, I always kind of, when people say political films, I'm like, watch Starship Troopers, please! Because it's a really interesting way to kind of get a political film that doesn't feel political at all. When it came out, a lot of people were like, this is really stupid and a really weird action movie. It wasn't until much later that they're like, actually, no, this is quite a smart political film, if you like. But yeah, it's good because it links back to what you were saying about propaganda movies and stuff like that as well. It's a really interesting kind of modern take on a lot of the earlier propaganda films that came out in the 30s and 40s and stuff like that. Loads of good ones of them as well. I don't know, have you ever heard of Reefer Madness? Have you ever seen
No,
Reefer
I
Madness?
haven't, no.
Oh, it's an American anti-drug propaganda film from the 30s, and it's kind of famous for being insanely over the top. Like, if you smoke marijuana, you will die, and stuff like that. It's really, you would watch it now and laugh, but at the time it kind of inspired this kind of odd panic and stuff like that. So like the history of political films and political uses of film is really, really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think it's interesting, sort of what you're touching on there is like, I think it's relevant to like the culture and the decade it's set in and what's going on at that time. America's had like various sort of things, like you said, like I'm just picking on America really at the moment. I do have a few British references, but like you've got American sort of, there's very much like the 70s. It's all about there's a lot of religion in there, be it political or not, and like I said, drugs and use and things like that. And I think that influences the type of political film maybe, and obviously war affected the films that are being made, because people make films about what they see and what they know. That's the sort of writing thing, is like, write what you know. So I guess a lot of the screenwriters or directors are going off what they know and what's relevant to that time. And people even now make films about the past, and they need to sort of get the culture and the context of when these things are set, and politics can be brought into that sort of very easily, really. So it's just having an overall understanding, I think, helps to sort of understand like whether that they're trying to use satire or just give you more of an informative kind of thing. I think it's just, I think, like, I got Starship Troopers straight away. Like I completely got it. I knew I could see what it was trying to do, and I liked that. But obviously at the time, I mean, I was very young. I think I was very young when it came out. But I guess in the 90s, it's would have had a very different reception for mainstream audiences. But maybe it just shows how we've progressed. Like in the 2020s, it's just people have a more broader scope, and okay, actually, what is this about?
You get smarter and more savvy to things as well. So like these films kind of get reappraised and stuff as time goes on. I was wondering what you think about like overtly political films. Have you seen any? Like, have you seen anything recently that you kind of thought was like super, like, wow, this is making a real statement?
Nothing sort of obvious that sort of springs to mind, but I think I mean, we're sort of merging topics a little. I think a lot of Marvel stuff does have this political element. It always has, and I've always thought that, from the cinema that I watched like the superhero films, not necessarily MCU, but when I was younger, they were a lot more light-hearted. There might have been some political elements to there, but now, like, there's just, it's just I can just see it. It's so clear, like it's so dark, it's so reflective of the bigger, world, in terms of like, yeah, any sort of corruption from within side, terrorism. There's all this sort of big issues. And I think they're very dramatic films. I wouldn't say they're necessarily kid films because of how political they are.
Yeah. I agree with you. I always thought the Captain America films, especially, and like, we'll probably get on to this as we go on as well. But, just on what we were saying about propaganda films and stuff from the 40s, the really cool send up of them in the first Captain America film, and they keep kind of coming back to that as it goes forward as well. Because like he has that journey of being like an American, basically propaganda puppet, to being more distrustful of the system that he finds himself working in, to then being completely opposed to it by the end of the third Captain America film.
Yeah.
So like the Marvel universe is a really cool example of how films can, like, some films can very subtly kind of push a political point home or make a point about society in general.
Another, I've just thought of it as well, another film that I watched recently, it's not necessarily a new release, but a film that I watched recently was Brassed Off. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've not, no.
So I think it's set in the 90s. Yeah, it'd be set in the 90s, and it's very similar to the Full Monty, I would say. Probably a bit less comedic, but it's got that similar sort of tone. It's so it follows I think it's a nondescript sort of Yorkshire town, and it's, I think, Thatcher's, the looming threat of Thatcher closing the mine that's supporting a lot of the sort of working men within the family is there. And there's a little bit of a community of these men that have a brass band, and obviously the threat there of not having any jobs. And then they decide to go for this competition to get prize and sort of help the guy that's been leading it, because the whole sort of society might close just because of lack of funding and payments. So there's very much this sort of very, very, like, very political moment throughout, really, actually, but there's a very good monologue from one of the characters, and it is directed directly at Thatcher. Like, it's not hiding at all. I'd really recommend you watch it, Retrocora.
So, as you've been describing it, I think I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, and I've heard of I've heard a lot of good reviews about it, so I'll definitely pick that one up. It sounds similar to, as you said, like the Full Monty, just in the sense that it's about kind of working class people who are struggling under like difficult government and stuff like that, and that's a really British thing as well. It's a really British thing that we do. I think Mike Leigh is a director that gets really into like working class stuff. I think it's Mike Leigh, and there's another one that Ken Loach. Yeah.
I've never seen any of his films, but from what I know, he's very much sort of puts a light on the working class sort of people, from what I've heard anyway.
Daniel Blake is a Ken Loach film that I would strongly recommend watching.
Was that the one that won the Oscar?
If you want to watch like political kind of movies, have you seen it? Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it. I think, was that the one that came out a couple of years ago?
Oh, it would have been 2017, 2018 maybe. It's one of his later films, and it's like it just kind of takes the universal credit system and the benefit system apart completely.
Yeah.
It's a really, really cool movie. It's another one though that it really betrays that, well, not doesn't betray, but it really kind of shows the left wing politics of the filmmaker and everyone involved with the film. I think that the guy who plays Daniel Blake he's not like an actor to trade. I don't think, and he's at least he's not a famous one, and he kind of has experience of what are the things that the film is talking about and stuff like that, and it's a really interesting example of someone who has a really clear political view and uses his films to kind of push that point across.
Yeah, definitely. I did hear that about the actors, that none of them were really actors, and I think that adds something to it that I guess some actors, like, if there was an actor who, I don't know, say went to a private school and went to drama school and then said, can you act, as this sort of working class person who's struggling to, put food on the table, can they bring that life experience? I don't know if they can to the role. It might not be as genuine, so I think that definitely helps.
He's done that in a few films as well. Like, I'm sure, like, this is going way back even before my lifetime, but like he did a film called Kes years and years ago.
I've heard of it, yeah, I've just not seen it.
Yeah, it's from, I think it came out in the like late '70s. And the actors in that I don't think are like famous actors or anything like that. And it's like, again, it's like looking at working class child's like experience and stuff like that. And it's I haven't seen Kes for years, but I remember it being really powerful. Yeah, like lots of British examples of really cool political cinema.
Yeah, I don't know whether I haven't really spoken to any sort of American people about it, but I don't know. I'd be interested to see how that sort of transpires to them, really, or anyone else around the world that's not from the UK, and just sort of seeing if they have that context, and if they sort of understand that. Whereas I think maybe with American politics, I think everyone has a sort of a good basis. Sometimes it could be a little bit niche, but I think everyone would have a bigger understanding because of America's power and stuff, so the influence is there.
You get hit with so much from the news of America. Like, America is everywhere, and then like you watch that much American cinema as well that you always feel like you've got a strong base watching American stuff. For me as well, like, I deal with American politics for my career, so I'm just kind of immersed in it. I always feel like I'm kind of at a more. I kind of know more when I'm watching an American film than I do even with a British film sometimes.
Yeah, like I said a bit earlier, it was sort of like that cultural sort of context, and I think that probably makes it a little bit easier for you, with what you do, so you can sort of understand the roots of it all, sort of where it comes from. I've just seen a few people post a few things in the chat. Snowbuckle says, "Sorry to bother you," has a very overtly political message. I highly recommend it. I've never seen that film, but I keep seeing it pop up on, I think it's on Netflix. It's on. Have you seen that, Retrocora?
Not seen it. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. But if it's recommended as a political film, then I'm definitely gonna put it on the list.
It's got I know it's Lakeith Stanfield, who was in Get Out, and what's her face? Tessa Thompson. She's in it as well. Plays Valkyrie. So
yeah, she's great.
So it should be good, just from them two alone.
Yeah.
Tommy agrees. Brastoff, it's a cracking film. Snowbuckle says Ken Loach as well. So very, very similar from what we're thinking.
Oh, nice. Excellent, Snowbuckle.
Tommy B says, "I feel like American political films are mostly about the bright lights or the seediness that hides behind them, whereas British political cinema is more bleak about the effects of the politicians."
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
You do get, like, there's a kind of separate but equal kind of right, almost right, not right wing, but like an American pro-government filmmaking wing, if you like, as well, that kind of runs parallel to. Like, you get all the films that are about politicians and all the kind of crap that goes on and the corruption, like those films are all over the place, but then there's this parallel kind of running side them of films like Zero Dark 30 or I can never The Hurt Locker, American Sniper, like quite a few films by Clint Eastwood actually that are really about like pushing almost jingoistic like American points of view. And that's the kind of, I think was it Tommy that said that? I think that's a fair point as well, though, that like you don't get so many films that are just about the regular life of the American everyman, or you didn't until quite recently. Nomadland is quite good, I think, for
I've not watched that yet.
Showing a little bit about what's happening and what the effect of political decisions on the kind of the normal person is like.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's sort of overtly political in terms of American cinema that's not talking about a president or the Iraq War or something that's not necessarily. it sort of puts them in a positive light. You know, that it's almost propaganda within itself, and you know, everyone's going to give their own perspective of how, you know, that event was, because you know they're talking about their own country. What's your opinion, sort of, on sort of Vietnam films?
Vietnam films are a really weird one. So, you didn't see during the conflict itself. You almost didn't see a single film come out about Vietnam or looking at the war in any kind of form. The only kind of major studio film that came out during the first major phase of Vietnam is called The Green Berets,
Don't know that one.
and it's John Wayne who's the star, and it is pure propaganda.
Oh wow.
It's not even a good film. It's just really pro American involvement, like just a John Wayne doing a John Wayne film in Vietnam. I feel like, and it's not good. The kind of telling thing for me is that Vietnam was the first time really that the American public had gone against American government and really protested a war.
Yeah.
It's only like you see that kind of creeping into filmmaking after the fact. Like Apocalypse Now came out a couple of years after the war ended.
Yeah.
That was one of the first big ones, The Deer Hunter, I think in 1978, which isn't accurate in any way, shape, or form. Like a lot of the stuff that happened in The Deer Hunter never really happened in real life. But it's all kind of the Deer Hunter is more about, and actually it's probably an example of what we were talking about. It's one of the few examples of a film showing what happened to the people rather than a kind of political scandal or anything like that. That's probably more about soldiers' experience and kind of what happens to troops when they come back. Because Christopher Walken's character in that has all kinds of PTSD and is really, really badly affected by what he sees in Vietnam, and that's a really interesting kind of study of war. Even if it's not really, you know, super accurate, that's fine because it's not really about that. It's about making the point, I think. I always find the Vietnam kind of films I'm most interested in are ones that are either directed by or written by Oliver Stone, because he fought in Vietnam. He is a Vietnam veteran.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of his films, a lot of the stuff that he wrote about, actually come from his experience in war. So like, and he said that before. Like a lot of the stuff that he writes about, it comes from stuff that he's either heard about or you know whatever. And I always find it really interesting to see the difference in tone between his film and the kind of the Vietnam films that came before it. I love Vietnam cinema because it's close to my area and what I can talk about. You don't see a lot of pro-Vietnam films. Even nowadays, you don't see a lot of films that glorify it or you know get involved in it, because I think it was such a divisive thing, and it really, the fact that America didn't win that conflict when they were expecting to, really kind of scarred a lot of Americans, because it was such an unexpected thing for them. So you just don't see the focus on Vietnam that you do on other conflicts like the Second World War films, stuff like that. Even Iraq, Vietnam's it's almost like a forgotten thing.
Yeah, it is.
I find it dead interesting. Like, there's another one I would recommend. I think it's Oliver Stone as well. Actually, Born on the 4th of July.
Oh, I've not seen it. I think I've seen clips, but I've seen parts of it. Yes, yeah.
If you ever want proof that Tom Cruise can actually act and isn't just a guy who runs funnily, that is the film. He's really, really good in it, and it's a really good film about a Vietnam veteran who's come home from the war and actually tried to do something with it. So yeah, I absolutely love Born on the 4th of July. I would strongly recommend it. But it's a really good source of political statements and political like kind of filmmaking in the States, and it's been that for a wee while. It's just a shame you don't see as much focus on it in the kind of during Vietnam and also kind of after it as well, like in the first 5-10 years after it.
Yeah, I have a sort of a love-hate relationship with war films. It's not a genre that I would sort of lean towards, but every now and then you get those films that sort of I personally prefer war films that sort of depict sort of what the people are going through, and the sort of like any sort of things they're going through afterwards. I much prefer those sort of films. Like some of my favourite war films are Fury. I like Full Metal Jacket. I think that's quite an interesting look
A great
at the
film.
Vietnam War. And what was the other one that I liked? Dunkirk. I think that was probably pretty well done. I know that's can be quite a divisive one, but I also like The Five Bloods as well that came out last year. I thought that was really,
I
really,
haven't seen that yet. I've heard really good things
really,
about it.
really well done. Very powerful.
Yeah, excellent. Full Metal
Yeah.
Jacket's a great film. I'm kind of the same. Like war films, I don't like films that are just like, oh, look at all this fighting that's going on. Like, you know, that Saving Private Ryan scene's all very well and good, but it's not really for me.
Yeah.
I am kind of the same. I like films that show what was going on in the home front. I like films that show like human impact of war.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like all these kind of big war spectacle films, they're not really my.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like Full Metal Jacket so much, because it's not really about the war. It's about what the soldiers went through both to get there,
Yes.
and also what kind of happened when they got there. It's a strange film because it's two different. It's like two films
parts. Yeah.
one. And the first part is so different from the second part, but I think it works. And
Yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like Stanley Kubrick as director. Say what you want about him as a person, but he makes some very good films.
I very problematic individual, probably, but yeah, you can't say that his films weren't really, really good.
Yeah, you can't deny that. Crimp says, would you consider Jacob's Ladder a Vietnam adjacent film?
Yes, I would. You know, I didn't mention Jacob's Ladder because I thought that's quite niche.
I've never seen it, so this is to you, Cora.
It's a Tim Robbins film from, I want to say, about 1990-ish. You're looking at maybe kind of 15 years after Vietnam's finished. I'm not going to ruin the plot because it's quite twisty-turny.
Okay.
And there's a kind of big ooh at the end, near the end of the film, where you're like, right, that's something that happened. But for me, it's a really cool deconstruction of psyche of someone who fought in Vietnam and who was involved in the conflict. So I would definitely consider it a film that looks at the human side of Vietnam in a way that only a film can.
Okay.
You can't like. I think it's based on a book. I think it is based on a book, but you don't get that. I wouldn't expect you to get that kind of visceral connection with the book as you do with the film. I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in the weirder side of war filmmaking, if you like. I love it. I think it's really, really good.
Okay, I'll add it to my watch list after this, definitely. Snowbuckle says, I just bounced off Dunkirk, felt like it was doing too much and was only interested in spectacle. I thought Retrocora agrees. I liked it. It's definitely like in my top 3 Nolan films personally. I think I didn't see it in IMAX, but I just thought the whole experience, which I guess could be the spectacle side of it, was so, no pun intended, but submersive. With those sort of half water scenes, and I thought it was interesting with the 3 different the land, sea, and the air kind of approach. But I think Cillian Murphy's character is probably the most interesting because it's sort of what we're saying now, Retrocora, about sort of the effects of war. I sort of thought he was quite interesting in that one. That's why I like it.
There's one plot line, I think, in Dunkirk, and I think you've just kind of mentioned that I really like, and the rest of it kind of bounced off me a little bit. But then I kind of knew going, like, I had that thing where I kind of knew going in that there were going to be bits that I wasn't that interested in, so maybe I was kind of killing my own interest in it before it started.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I also only saw Apocalypse Now for the first time recently and was blown away.
Oh, wow.
Somehow doesn't even feel like a war film. Ooh, what do you mean by that, Snowbuckle?
Apocalypse Now is a modern adaptation of a book.
Oh, is it?
Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness.
Oh, I've heard of Heart of Darkness. I think I've actually got it up there, actually. I just never read it.
The book is, I don't know when it was released, but it's set in like the Boer War, I think. It's kind of transposed almost 100 years into the future, if you like. To Vietnam, it works really well though, like because everything is completely believable in that setting, and
Yeah.
in that, like when you hear about some of the Vietnam stories and stuff like that, and some of the stuff that the American soldiers did in Vietnam, um, it really tracks to what Colonel Kurtz kind of does in the film and the kind of stuff that he's getting up to.
Gosh, I'll have to read. I have to prioritize that book then. Now you've
Oh,
piqued,
definitely, yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
you've piqued my interest. Husband's here. Hello, husband. How are you doing?
Hi, husband.
Have we talked at all about June yet? we haven't talked about June. I
Always
mean,
time for doing.
I've not seen the first one, but I'm excited for the second one.
Oh, have you not seen the? Have you not seen the?
I have no
the 80s
idea.
Dune?
Nope, I have no idea what's going to happen. I've not read the book. I've not seen the first film.
I've tried to keep dark on. I've tried to stay dark on the new one because I'm really excited for it.
Me too.
But the original Dune, people don't like the original Dune. I know a lot of fans of the book don't like the original Dune. I really like it. It's
Isn't Sting in it?
It's a weird mix of slightly cheesy and really, really earnest science fiction.
Yeah.
And it's got Sting in it, and how can you not love Sting?
I mean, we know husband loves Sting, so I'm sure he loves
He is
June.
a big Sting man.
Husband says he couldn't quite get into Dunkirk either. Tom Hardy being paid a fortune for doing nothing. I mean, did he even say a word? I don't think he did, to be honest. Feels like the war was just used as a setting for a psychological journey. Oh, so that was about Dunkirk, was it? No, Apocalypse Now. Sorry, that was Snorbuckle. Lawrence Fishburne was only 14 when he was in that. He lied about his age to get in it like the real army. Oh, I didn't know that. I did know he was in it. I remember when I was watching, I was like, hang on. What's going on
He
here?
was. I can't remember. I'll take husband's word that he was 14, but I know he was definitely underage.
Yeah.
And for being like in the film, he was very, very young, insanely young.
Wongo says that book is one of your all-time favourites, which I'm guessing he's talking about June. I think we're talking about June.
Yeah, June's brilliant. June's top sci-fi.
The new film is only half the book, though, apparently. Is that deliberate, or is that setting up a sequel? I don't know.
I think they're planning two if this one is good. Don't take my word for that, please. That might be a lot of rubbish. June is a very big. There's a lot of source material to get into one film.
It's a thick book. I've seen it. It's like that's a thick book.
Yeah, there's a lot to pack in.
I'm interested for it, like, because oh my gosh, MJ, thank you very much for the resub. Yes, me and Retrocora just talking about June as you've come in there. But thank you very much for subscribing. Much appreciated. What was I going to say? Yes, I'm excited for June. It's going to be great because Denis Villeneuve is one of my favourite directors at the minute. I think we've spoken about that. We've got a very similar sort of love for him.
I think he's good.
And I think the cast looks amazing. Really, you've got all of some of like this generation's great actors in one film. So I think it's going to be good.
Rebecca Ferguson's cast, isn't she?
Yeah, that's probably my least favourite out of the cast, to be honest.
There's a couple of people who are going to be in it I'm really excited about, but it just, like as you say, Villeneuve is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He makes films that look visually amazing. Like Arrival looks amazing.
Yeah.
And Blade Runner, like people don't like, or some people don't like Blade Runner 2049. I love it. And it looks amazing. It looks so good.
Yeah, the cinematography was so good. So I'm hoping that
June carries that one.
I think it will. I think after seeing Arrival, I was like, I think he's going to do fine in the sci-fi genre. To be honest, I was like, he's going to be good. Shall we move on to the next topic that I sort of spoke to you about briefly? Yeah. So the second sort of topic that I thought we could sort of stem from was the question is, do you think the MCU has longevity? Do you think the cinematic universe has potential to carry on for 5-10 years plus? Discuss.
I think people really underestimate power and the ability that these films and these styles of films have to keep moving on. Like, I remember when I was like 15, 16, and films like the first Hulk film were coming out, and Daredevil and Elektra, and people were like, "Oh, the superhero film fad is over. There will never be there will never be like this fad cannot continue." And then the MCU came in 2008 and just blew that completely out of the water. And what they did, what they continue to do, is rather than making like superhero films that have start, a middle, and end, and it's all very kind of modified. They do that in a way, but they've managed to kind of make genre films that just happen to be superhero films. Like Captain America's a political thriller series, Iron Man's a straight action series, Ant-Man is a series of heist films. Like, they do that, and they've managed to keep themselves changing and keep themselves moving. I worry that they're becoming a little bit ambitious with the storylines, but because it's one thing to ask someone to accept time traveling superhero Captain America being stuck in ice and coming out 70 years later. It's another thing to ask them to accept Loki and the female version of Loki going to the lair of the man who runs time and things like that.
Yeah.
And like multiple timelines and stuff like that. And I've heard a lot of people say this will be my dropping off point.
Oh, okay.
I realised I was about to go into spoiler territory there and had to pull back. So you kind of, I feel like it's not going to stop. I feel like it's kind of at that point where it's too big to stop. I feel like it's not gonna disappear. And I feel like Marvel, if nothing else, have earned the benefit of the doubt that they will be able to reinvent themselves and keep going and keep releasing stuff that appeals to people. I think the fact that Black Widow came out and did something like, even not taking into account the Disney Plus sales, I think it did something like 200 million, 150 million in its first weekend, even with massively diminished cinema capacities, not being released in certain territories, all the rest of it. I think that kind of proves that there's life in there. And it's a film where, I don't think this is a spoiler, but it's a film where the kind of superpower aspect of it is minimal.
Yeah, I think
it still kind of encompasses that superhero film.
Yeah.
I think, if you like. It's another one where it's like a genre film as well. It's like Marvel's attempt at a James Bond film, I thought. I loved that. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, it was a different spin. It felt much more like an action film to me. But then if you think about who Black Widow is person, she doesn't necessarily have superpowers. Like, she's like a agent. But so you knew that going in a little. But I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting direction for like the MCU. I don't think everyone will get it and like it for many reasons. The sort of the genre film that it is, the fact it's a female superhero character leading it. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but I think it was an interesting direction to take it. I think it's setting up maybe the different tone going forward. It made me, some of the shots in that film, this isn't spoiling it, but some of the cinematography made me excited for the Eternals, which is going to come out. Is it Chloe Zhao who did Nomadland?
Wow.
Yeah, and it makes me excited for them bringing in, because obviously they brought in like Taika Waititi to freshen up like the comedy. But I think, well, these are two female directors, but I think they're going to bring something a lot more cinematic and a different spin to it. And I think that's what's going to help keep the longevity of the MCU by keeping it fresh and mixing it up a little bit. And hopefully bringing in more people as well. A lot of people I know have watched all of the films in lockdown because of Disney Plus or just because of time. So I think that's brought in a lot of new fans as well. Like, there's already millions around the world, but I think it's brought in even more. And I think that change in style and genre might even escalate it a little bit. Maybe bring in a different type of fan. If you like Chloe Zhao's Nomadland, you might just watch this one film because you like her style of direction, and then that might be a change, like chain reaction, possibly, maybe.
Bringing in some directors who've got like indie credibility it seems to be the way that they're going at the moment. Although I say that Sam Raimi is doing Doctor Strange, isn't he? But Chloe Zhao, they've got there was a name just floated about for Blade. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but it's someone who has a really indie kind of sensibility and has done a few different things, and that seems to be the way that they're going, is to bring in guys, and Ryan Coogler as well for Black Panther.
Yeah.
Bringing in guys and men and women who have a style of their own, but who equally will be able to work in the Marvel house style.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that they've kind of tried to do all the way through, I think, and you see that with like James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. It's becoming more and more obvious that is what they're doing, and I think Eternals is really going to throw that out there, and I like that. I love that. I've heard that Marvel think they're onto something really big with Eternals, like they think it could be really, really, really popular franchise, and that makes me even more excited for it, to be honest. I do worry about oversaturation, because we're kind of at the point now where, because of the backlog, we're getting like 4 Marvel films this year, 6 TV shows, all of the stuff that, but I think it's the same next year. Like there's 4 films due. Doctor Strange is due out. I think it's Thor next year.
I think so.
And other stuff as well. And it's just like, I worry that maybe people who are a bit more casual, because I'm like hardcore Marvel. I'm in it till I die at this point. I worry that people who are a bit more casual will be like, right, I'm not watching like Loki, WandaVision, Hawkeye, and What If to get the story for Doctor Strange 2. That's a point of no return. But I feel like they're probably going to kind of set it up where the films will not refer back to the TV shows too much, and that's a kind of necessity, because they do, then it just becomes too big a thing, and people end up. I think I just saw Wongo in the comments being like, "I'm really burned out with it." I totally get that.
Yeah.
It's franchise that is about to turn 13. I think Iron Man's just about to turn 13.
Yeah, I think so.
And I can totally get that, but I think for me, I am still excited about what's to come. I still think there's a lot of really interesting stories and stuff that they can tell on it. The other thing I was thinking as well, and I think it was Wongo again that said it, like, I think Black Widow doing better as a TV show. I worry now that we're going to get this thing of where the films come out and people are like, "Oh, would I love to see that come out across 6 parts of a TV show?" And then the TV shows will come out and people will be like, "Oh, but that would have been really good on the big screen as a film." And you get that kind of like, "Oh, but what if we tried it in this way, and what if we tried it that way?"
Yeah, that's the problem. Now you've got that platform, and we've seen TV shows and some of it can work. Everyone's like, "Well, you've got that option now," and it's just, it's kind of ruined it in a sense, I guess. Like, you know, because if it was just a film, like, that's the fixed media, that's it, that's fine, okay, move on. But, you know, because you can have it like that, you know, have more characterization, bring in other minor characters, you know, you could just, I think it's going to just be, from now on, it's just, oh, well, that would have been a TV show, or that actor is really good, let's give him a spin-off. And it's just... Yeah.
I'm just trying to, I think for me, it's going to be the case where I need to just take everything at face value. If I enjoy the film, and if, like, even if I think it would have been better as a TV show, I think I've got to kind of make that mental cut off of being like, well, do you know what? It's not a TV show, it's a film. And for what it was really good. I liked Black Widow, I thought it was very good. It's a shame that it was affected by release schedules and things in the way that it was, and it's a shame that for whatever reason Marvel didn't commission it at the right time. Like, if Black Widow had come out in 2016, 2017, they could have set up a wee sequel for it, or you know, done something else. Now they're kind of hamstrung by what's happened in other films, and it's difficult to see them making a sequel, even if it does really, really well.
Yeah, I think I was very confused. I don't think this is a spoiler, but the time setting, sort of like what you just said then, like when I kept going through the films, like, when is this set? I was really confused as to when this was set, because from the trailer I thought this must have been before she was in the Avengers. It's not. It's sort of just, splattered between, some Avengers films. I was like, what's this? But I think, obviously, I imagine most of us seen Endgame, and you know where the character goes of Black Widow, sorry, and there's these moments you're like, oh, it's quite, it does give you that sort of emotional element to it that I think if we saw it in 2016, 2017 when it's set, I don't know if we would have had that same connection with the character that then maybe we're trying to set up.
Yeah, I think that is a good point.
Yeah, I think just the sort of the final sort of few scenes. I don't know. I think the ending could have completely written differently if it was set then. Obviously, because they might not have known what was going to happen.
It's always kind of written with the next. And I know that's a criticism some people have of it. Like, it's always written with the next thing in mind. I've been reading comic books all my life. I know what I'm signing up for with a comic book film. It is going to lead up to the next big thing, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I thought the ending worked very well, actually, for what it was. I thought it was a pretty good package. Saw it the first time and I was like, right, it's a 7 out of 10 film. It's okay. Yeah. And then I watched it again and I was like, no, actually, there were bits of that I thought were really, really good. And I like the way that it made a point of kind of unpicking some of the more crappy moments of Age of Ultron as well. It was really good in that sense, and it wasn't wasn't done in like a pure obvious way, if that makes sense. It felt like a good part of the film.
Yeah, I think it was more subtle, and I think it didn't treat the audience as dumb at times, which sometimes they do. I really liked it. I would watch it again. Sort of knowing the genre and the pacing of it. It's different to most Marvel films. It was completely different to anything else. I mean, I'd likened it very to Captain Marvel. I'd say it's very similar to that in terms of tone and sort of the relevance of the sort of female agents and sort of the female characters and stuff. I think there was a really sort of strong, powerful moment towards the end of the film, which I'm not going to say, but it made me feel sort of quite emotional, like it did with Captain Marvel. Towards the end of that, and you have the montage of the sort of young girls and stuff. It felt very, very similar to that. But yeah, I think it's just proving that the next phase is going to be something a lot more diverse in terms of genre and tone with the next sort of films coming up.
Hope so. I feel like that kind of speaks to the longevity of the series as well. Like, if it's going to be more diverse, there's a larger potential audience to bring in. So you've got like first 3 phases are like films where white guys do white guy things. Yeah. And it must get to a point where it's like, right, need something different. So now we've got the Captain Marvel franchise, we've got potentially Black Widow stuff, if not Scarlett Johansson based, but we've got Black Widow stuff going on. Eternals is looking really good. Shang-Chi, and just it looks like it's finally going to diversify out. Yeah, actually look a whole lot more representative, and I think that will help the longevity of the series as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've learnt that as the 10, 13 years that have gone, they've sort of learnt who's watching these films and the importance of representation. Like, I remember there being this whole thing with, I think it was Age of Ultron, and they were bringing out sort of action figures, and they always do, and that's how you normally get leaked. Thank you very much for the follow, Kirsten. I think, yes, so like the dolls and stuff, there was a whole thing about Black Widow, and I just remember as I was watching the film, it was like they didn't include her. There's like this whole lineup of like Thor, Hulk. I think Hawkeye was even in there, but Black Widow wasn't.
It's a shame, it really isn't it? It's just not.
But hopefully, I've not been into like Toys R Us RIP or any of the toy shop, but I've not seen like, are there Black Widow toys? Are there, I know there was some Captain Marvel things, and I think there's Black Panther toys, but things like that, ultimately comes from the stories that they want to tell. Like there's so many Marvel characters they can choose, but they need to choose the ones that are diverse and tell different stories, to what they were telling the first 5 years of the sort of MCU, because it's important, because that's then what makes the toys, and that's what the kids are going to see. So
that's it.
It's
funny you say that. Like Jim Jam, my wife collects pop figurines, but she collects pop figurines specifically of strong female characters, and I collect pop figurines of Marvel Cinematic Universe villains. What we're finding more and more is that there's a really cool crossover between those two. So it kind of feels like, in the sense that like you're getting more toys now, and you're getting more representations of diversity in the toys. Much more so than you were maybe like even like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I think it's really cool to see, and I'm really glad it's finally starting to kind of creep in.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I think the TV shows have been a good way as well of showing very diverse characters. I think gender balance has been really very equally balanced, and some of the heroes and the villains have been very mixed. So yeah, I'm sort of I think that they're doing pretty well in terms of representation stuff. But I'm not sure how long this is actually going to last. I don't know how many of this, what's said, to like 2028, I think they've got films for, possibly.
I think they do, yeah. It's like
that's another 7 years.
They released a slate up to like 24, and then they were like, we've also got this, and this, and I was like, whoa. It explodes kind of with the amount of stuff that's coming out.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to go past that sort of 2028 marker?
I think that as long as it keeps making money for them, I think, like, again, Black Widow's pulling in cash, and it's pulling in cash in probably the most hostile cinematic environment there has ever been. And as long as the films keep doing that, they'll keep doing it. And again, not to spoil stuff as best as I can, but with the developments that they're bringing in, kind of doing it in such a way that they can remix older characters if they feel like it later on as well, and keep make it kind of self-sustain, like make the in-universe storyline self-sustaining, if you like.
Yeah.
I think it can keep going as long as they don't kind of do a DC and make some really horrendous missteps. I think it can keep going.
Yeah, and they start remaking them. It's sort of what Wongo's saying, alluding to, I guess, like the whole let's remake Suicide Squad, or half continuation with some of the same original cast, but not everyone. It's I don't know what they're doing over there.
It's so weird, and I've always been a kind of Marvel guy over DC and comic book reading and stuff like that anyway, but I really wanted the DC films to succeed and do well, because they're cool. They're all cool in their own way, but then they kept releasing stuff like Green Lantern, or like what was the other one that came out that was just weird? Suicide Squad. The 2016 film was really, really bad. And it's only recently that they've kind of gotten their act together a little bit and started releasing stuff that's quite good. I love Shazam. Shazam's brilliant. Yeah,
that is definitely one of the better DC films that I've seen. But I think that they've obviously got some kind of audience, because they're still making them. There's still money in there somewhere. But I think that as a franchise, sort of comic book universe, would die out much quicker than the MCU. Definitely.
They've not. The MCU is a really unique. Like, it's a really difficult thing, I think, to create such an interconnected in-film universe, to the point where like you've seen other studios try it. So like the Universal Monsterverse is a thing.
Yeah.
From one film.
The Mummy.
There was the Legend verse was tried. DC tried their interconnected thing that didn't work, and feels like Marvel has kind of hit the jackpot for this really unique set of films and media that nobody else seems to be able to hit.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, but it's working for them really well just now. Kevin Feige probably has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think yeah, like from the top down, I think that's had a big influence in terms of the success of the films. And yeah, like I said, bringing on like those creative directors and thinking of new ways to make it appealing to people, old and new fans, really. But yeah, I don't know if it's got much in it. Maybe 10 years or 2030. Yeah, I mean, besides the MCU, like, well, I guess in the last 5 years or so, I've not been into the MCU films as much as I used to be. I was massively into them when they first sort of came out, but upon reflection, I don't think like Phase One was great at all. But I don't know. I just was sort of really obsessed with them. I still do. I still go on a cinema trip with like a certain group of friends that were into those films. But I don't know. It's just become like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to go and see that sometimes. And then you get the odd one that does pique your interest more than others. Obviously, Infinity War and Endgame were the big ones, sort of as of recent. And then like Spider-Man, which I saw, but obviously I was quite disappointed with that one. So yeah, I don't know. It's going a bit like that for me at the minute in terms of the quality of the films coming out.
I think that's fair. And it's kind of what we were saying as well. Like there must be a point where like the kind of even the most hardcore of film goers gets that fatigue point where they're just like, I can't go into these things all the time. It's just a question of whether or not they can keep kind of reinventing themselves. I'm kind of biased because I bought into it many years ago, and I'm just like, give me all of the things. And I love Spider-Man as well. Spider-Man is like my thing, my guy.
Yeah.
So like the more I can see, the better, and it's hard to get away from that sometimes. But I do see the point of it just being like it's had its moment, and now it's kind of, will it be able to capture what it? Because I mean, Avengers Endgame made $3 billion. Will they ever be able to make a film that gets close to that again?
Nope, I don't think so.
I would tend to think that they need to. I'm hoping they've kind of tempered their expectations to say, right, well, Endgame was the culmination of 10 years of planning, and it's probably not. Like our new films probably aren't going to make like billions of dollars in the first instance, so we either need to build something up again, or change tack a little bit. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, they might try and go for like another 10-year approach maybe, and see where they get to in the next 10 years. See if it's as successful as if the audiences are there, still bringing in the money, and then I think they might just call it quits, end on a high if they're still going towards that point. But it'll be interesting to see where technology is in that time as well. I mean, if you look at like the CGI progression within these films, it's insane. It has some of the best VFX you can get in cinema at the moment. Yeah, I'm just really interested to see how lifelike it can get. When will we bring back some kind of more sort of 3D cinema when that was a thing, or VR? I don't know. Like, where's it going to be in?
I would love a VR time. Spider-Man. Can you imagine swinging about as Spider-Man?
I think that'd be sick.
That was crazy. I would love that.
I mean, that might happen on a game possibly. I don't know if they might do it in the cinema, but
PlayStation 6 Spider-Man VR.
Yeah, could be.
100% of the profits for thinking of that.
We've patented it right here. If they make that, I'll save this video, Cora. Don't you worry.
That's the one.
What's one going to say? By the time the MCU films have wound down, Disney will have bought DC. Probably. It's going to be, just a couple of people that are going to own all the TV and all the spaceships and all the everything, phones. It's only going to be like 5 guys, isn't it? Really, that's going to own everything. I think.
I like 3 major film studios in Disney, and they're all run by Disney. I think it seems to be the way that it's going.
Yeah.
Because I think Warner Brothers own DC, don't they? And they
Yes.
have the kind of
Yes.
like obviously exclusive rights to all the films and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
definitely Disney are that powerful just now. I would not bet against them putting a cheeky
Yeah.
bid in.
You think of how much like things they bought, like just even like, in terms of the TV show, like Disney Plus got like Stars and all these really bizarre things. You're like, there's like 18 plus TV shows and films on Disney. Like I didn't expect that at all.
Not all sorts of content on it. It's frightening.
Yeah, so they might make DC movies. I don't know. I don't know if they will. That'd be interesting though. Snowbuckle says all the superhero stuff going on at the minute. I'm most excited about Spider-Verse. Oh, there you go, Rich Cora. Same as you.
Yeah, Spider-Verse. I love Spider-Verse so much.
I'm intrigued to see where the next film goes because it's all been very discreet. In terms of like, I've not sought them out, but I've not seen any like set pictures or anything leaked. But people are making very sort of educated guess about potential actors, being in it and stuff, and opening up a verse.
I love all the rumours that fly about the like not just Spider-Verse but also Spider-Man No Way Home. It's just like, oh, this person's going to be in it, this person's going to be in it, and they'll be playing like the character that they played in this film 20 years ago and all the rest of it. And it's like, there's no way that it's going to go the way that you think it's going to go.
No.
But it'll be the same as WandaVision where everyone's like, oh, Mr. Fantastic's coming and like this person's coming and all this is happening. It's like, I'm really happy to go along for the ride, but I'm not going with a lot of the things that they're saying.
I think it's the same with sort of the Venom film came out. Like everyone was like, oh yeah, well you're gonna have Tom Holland in it, but because I think it was the whole sort of blur, wasn't it? It was like Sony still owned it, but had like a Marvel thing at the beginning or whatever in association with. It's that's going to stop any sort of crossovers that you'd like to happen. It comes from money and the producers and who owns that sort of production company that's going to stop you from having your ideal crossover, I think.
It was like Marvel kind of messed themselves up. Or Marvel bankrupted themselves in the 90s through just terrible business practices, and the way that they got themselves out of bankruptcy was by selling off character rights. The problem that they had was that the deals that they sold meant that the character rights cannot revert back to Marvel if Sony keep releasing films. But the other problem that they've got is that Spider-Man, most of the kind of main villains in the Marvel universe traditionally come from either Spider-Man, the X-Men, or the Fantastic Four, and until very recently Marvel had the rights to none of those things, which is why you got like what in the comics were considered like B-tier characters in the first few Marvel films. But even now, like the Marvel can't make films with Spider-Man villains in them. You won't see like, without Sony's blessing, so to say, you won't see like Doctor Octopus in an Ant-Man film, even though they might fight in the comics or something like that. It's a shame because it is, as you say, it's just all money and like money related stuff, and that's what stops some really cool crossovers from happening. Like I would love to see Venom, the MCU, and would love to see, because I saw the trailer for the new one, and Woody Harrelson looks hilarious, and I would love to see him in like a proper crossover film, but it's not likely.
I thought the Venom film was okay. There was some very weird, laughable moments, but I thought it was okay. Not as bad.
I love it. Love it in a kind of in the same way that I love like an old Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. It's like it's not great.
Yeah, just enjoy it.
Go along with it. Like, you can't help it. Yeah,
if you just put your guard down, enjoy it. It's a good time. I saw it in the cinema and I thought it was fun. I laughed at it maybe when I shouldn't have laughed at it, but I quite liked it, and I'll watch the second one. I think it'll be interesting to see the dynamic between Eddie and Venom, I think, in this one.
Yeah, I'll go and I'll enjoy it, I think.
Venom was entirely worth it purely for Tom Hardy in the lobster tank.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I love that scene so much.
Oh god, that's brilliant to see, like this really sort of tough actor that plays these sort of very very hyper masculine sort of characters and stuff. I thought it was very different for him, but I thought he did it pretty well actually.
I really enjoyed it.
Kind of felt like Tom Hardy thought he was making a Jim Carrey movie, says Becca.
I can see that. Like it's got a really like me, myself, and Irene, or like the Mask vibe about it in places. I love that. That's a great comparison.
Yeah, it's sort of very sort of almost like hyper aware, a bit camp, a bit.
Yeah.
It just yeah. I liked it. I liked it. I like seeing actors do something very bizarre such as that and puts them out of their comfort zone.
I'm there for that. I'm happy. There's a place for like the Marvel type of superhero film, and then I think there's always going to be a place for like the super campy, like just daft nonsense superhero film. I'm not a massive fan of like the super gritty ones. The kind of snarky Marvel ones I'm here for, and anything that's like Venom or and this might be controversial, but the 90s Batman films are terrible.
I love them.
I also absolutely love them.
Yeah.
I'm here for them.
I used to watch them all the time. I had them on VHS, and
Yeah.
just sort of seeing like Arnie as like I can't remember what he's called, Mr. Freeze, isn't he, or something?
Yeah.
I just loved
are
it.
so bad. I model myself off Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film. It's nice to see you. Like, oh.
The puns, that's where they stemmed from.
That's where it all comes from.
Yeah, I will always go back to like those sort of fun, sort of superhero, sort of like very campy kind of films. I think there's always a place for them. I don't think we'll ever go there again in terms of like modern cinema, but to have those and sort of go back to them is always good. But I think we might see more films that are like, I guess they're not necessarily superhero films outright, but more looking at superheroes in a different light, such as you've got TV shows like The Boys, and you've got the Watchmen series, which obviously is a comic book as well, sort of graphic novel, and then you've got things that are a bit, they play on the superhero genre, such as, why is my brain melted? Help me out, Cora. Plays on.
There's a couple of Alan Moore adaptations that kind of play on that. You might not think of, like, it's not great, but League of Extraordinary Gentlemen kind of does that. But also, what's the name of the film? For Vendetta is a kind of anti-superhero.
Yes. Yeah.
Like subversive superhero film almost, and it's obviously based on a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Invincible is one that's come out. I know Wongo watched that and loved it.
Yeah, I've not watched that. Yeah.
I've not had the chance to go through it yet, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. And it's got a really strong cast as well. So like, there's a lot of subversive stuff. The Boys is phenomenal. Oh, it's absolutely brilliant.
Not watched it yet. But anything like that, I think that will always be relevant, because I guess it sort of links to what we were saying earlier. Like, they sort of put these very much sort of worshipped heroes, characters on that were on a pedestal, and maybe knock them down a little, and it sort of brings in a different light to them, and yeah, I think that can be applied to, you could say anyone's a superhero. You could say, some people might say, certain political leaders a superhero, or celebrity, and any sort of like religious figure. Superman's very much Jesus Christ in terms of his sort of figure and rebirth and all this. So there's always going to be, whether it's in a Marvel film or any other film, I think the superhero and the political is sort of innately linked.
I think so. I think there's always a place for a political superhero film. I think Marvel shy away from it sometimes.
Like you said, Captain America is the most obvious, and that carried on with the TV show. I think that was very much very political in making it current events as well as sort of linking back to Captain America's sort of origin. I thought that was quite good.
Funnily enough, actually, we were talking about like Vietnam films and stuff like that earlier on. Iron Man's quite close to, like, Iron Man was a weird film that kind of took Vietnam origin, because like Iron Man originally was born, if you like, in the Vietnam War, and like updated it to the Iraq War.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that's another kind of political thing. It's like, look, this guy's doing Iraq-related weapons selling. It's not good. We should probably, stop that kind of thing. Yeah, so I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a space, but I think superheroes might not be, or the MCU might not be as obviously these sort of comic book characters depicted. But I think the sort of the traits of a superhero will be there in different forms of media, not necessarily film or TV, but I think they will always be there. Really,
Would agree with you there.
yeah. What I just check what anyone else was saying. Crimp says, as a counterpoint, I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was far too comfortable in Nightcrawler. That's such a that's such a different topic, but yeah. I mean, I worship Jake Gyllenhaal's acting ability in many things. You know, there's the odd film that I will put my hands up and say are terrible, but yeah, Nightcrawler was an interesting film, and I sort of looked up, sort of interviews and stuff, and how he went on like night patrols with actual sort of night crawlers, and he studied them, and he compared his character to a coyote, which is sort of all around America, Los Angeles, like wild dogs, and not necessarily method acting. I know he lost a lot of weight for it and stuff, but
Yeah.
I think that's the closest he's gone to method, as well as I guess the opposite would be Southpaw, where he gained a lot of muscle to be
I put a lot of muscle for that.
to be a boxer for that one. But yeah, I always think he should have deserved an Oscar recognition for that one. But hey ho.
It was really harsh omission.
Yeah, it's 2014. I can't remember what else came out in 2014, but
I remember it being a really big thing that he hadn't been nominated as well. Like, I remember quite a few people being quite up in arms about it, and it was a shame because it's a really good film.
Yeah,
and he's really good in it.
Same year was 12 Years a Slave, Gravity, Great Gatsby, Frozen, Her, Dallas Buyers Club. So it was quite a tough year, really.
Yeah.
So I think it's still a good film. Like, many people do praise it, regardless whether it wins awards or not. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, if it wins an Oscar.
A bit of gold is fine, but if you enjoy a movie, you enjoy a movie. If it connects with you, then so much the better.
Becca also says Invincible is a great watch. We'll probably like it if you liked The Boys. There you go, Cora. You'll definitely like it then.
Well, I've no doubt. I'm excited to watch it.
Evil Superman Kid movie.
Oh, Brightburn.
Oh, I've not watched that. No, but I did see the trailer for it, and it looked quite scary. I'm not gonna lie.
It's really. It's basically. Whoever said, like, it's basically like, what if Superman landed, were adopted, and then just turned out to be an absolute psycho.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's a difficult watch actually. I recommend it if you like kind of subversive superhero films, but it's a difficult watch.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of it. I just remember seeing the trailer, and I think I saw it at the cinema. I was like, I might have even watched it through my fingers. I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Super is great. Super
is good. I actually watched that quite recently again. I can never remember. Is it Rainn Wilson?
Super.
And Elliot Page.
Oh yeah, the guy out of The Office.
Yeah. It's kind of it's like a kind of slightly darker, kick-ass-ish.
Oh, James Gunn directed it. Okay.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I think that might have gotten the Guardians of the Galaxy job actually, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, he looks very much like the Flash. I
He
don't know if
does,
that's
he
the
really
ode. Yeah. There's so many film recommendations I've got out of this. Very, very helpful. Hello, Pat. Welcome on in. We've just been talking about various film topics this evening, mainly about political cinema and the longevity of the MCU. So let us know if you have any opinions on those. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other points that you had on that sort of topic, Cora.
But like my main thing is just like I always think there's always things Marvel could do, and I know fans want Marvel to do it and show more clearly in their films, like LGBTQI representation and stuff like that. That it feels like they're holding back on because of political reasons.
Maybe.
It kind of meshes the two subjects together. If you like Loki kind of paid lip service to it a little bit, but I would like to see them go a bit further. I know Tessa Thompson, who we were talking about earlier, is super interested in having Valkyrie have relationships with, you know, anyone really in the Thor films. And she was saying she was really standing a Valkyrie.
Natalie Portman's character.
Portman, which I would love to see. Like I would love to see something like that in it. And that feels like the one thing that Marvel kind of seem almost scared to do, and I would love to see it. I would love to see. I would love to see that kind of pop up more.
Yeah, I think that's something they're a little bit scared of. Like, oh, okay, we can show a bit more sort of racial and ethnic diversity, but showing anything like that, like we're still I guess it's still coming out of America, which is still a very conservative country, you know, and their views and stuff. So I don't know if they've got that, and then obviously they are, you know, they do put this out worldwide, and some other countries might not get shown in. I think it might come down to that sort of financial and what other countries' policies are. I think we forget sometimes that certain countries do have, you know, very conservative, backwards views as such. So maybe it's that, but hopefully in the next 10 years or however long MCU is successful for, you get a bit more clear sort of representation in that way.
Yeah.
Rather than like, we'll do pink and blue lighting in the background, which is a nod to like a bisexual flag. Like, okay,
I loved what they did. Like, I loved what they did in Loki. I would like to see that. One, I would like to see it in the film specifically. But I would, again, I just want to see more of it. I think it's baby steps just now, and hopefully that'll turn into bigger things in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. But yeah, I think, well, we've been going for about an hour and a half now, Cora. Despite the little blip in the middle, the little technical issue that is my Wi-Fi. But yeah, have you enjoyed yourself chatting?
It's been great. It's been really good just coming on and chatting with you.
Yeah, it's I just wanted to do this sort of format really, just because it feels a little bit more natural. There's free flow. I don't have to edit this. I did a very similar sort of thing with Paul Kaczynski on my YouTube channel, but I did it over Zoom. I recorded it, edited it, but it just took so much time. Whereas if I did it like this, and if, you know, it would have been so much quicker. And obviously I'm like recording this myself, might make a highlights and stuff, but it gives you that option then, and allows for interaction with other people in the chat, which, you know, as we've been going along, I've been looking at sort of questions and stuff, so it's been a good method, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've really enjoyed. Firstly, chatting to you has been really cool because you obviously know your stuff so much. And it's cool just to chat about like random film subjects with you. But it's also been really cool to have that like Twitch interaction with people who've been commenting stuff.
Yeah.
And like some films and TV shows have been brought to my attention that I am very excited to go away and check out. So it's been awesome. How have you found it? Have you enjoyed yourself? Has it been good? Yeah,
no, I've enjoyed it. You know, I did a bit of sort of like, with the two topics, obviously it's going to change each time I do this, but just like doing a little bit of research and stuff was quite interesting to sort of, you know, get a bit more context of what we're talking about. It's nice to see other people in here, because I know a lot of people, obviously loads of people love films, and, you know, and it always comes up in, it doesn't matter what Twitch chat you're in, most people mention a film at some point. Point, so everyone's got an interest in film, so it's interesting to see, and I think a lot of people have very similar opinions to us in the chat, which is always good to hear. But yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, so I think I'm looking to do this maybe fortnightly, possibly, or something like that, see if people are interested. So if people are interested, do let me know, either on here or you can message me on Discord, whatever works. But yeah, there's definitely a few people I'd like to get on here. It doesn't have to be video, you know, Retrocora is happy to be on video today, but it can also be just done through voice chat if you'd prefer that way. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I think we
It'd be
should.
good to see you do more of these. And like, I think just about every single person who's come in chat, I would love to see you chat to them.
Yeah.
It's been really good, and I hope you do. I hope you do a lot more of them. And thank you so much for having me on as well.
Oh no, you're my test subject, Retrocora, but I think it's done really well. I think it's gone fine, minus a little end in the stream, but otherwise I think it's been good. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it.